Okay, welcome back to episode 28 of the Pregame Network podcast. This is Dan and Anthony again. No Joe again.
I don't
I'll
even know if
never
that man's
stop.
still in the country. No, you
I'll
should
never stop.
rip and rag on this man while he is enjoying himself on vacation or is otherwise in his deathbed because we need him here. I would say he
Um,
belongs to us, quite frankly, but
I think there's a law or two against that,
that's
but
why I
who's
didn't say it
counting?
verbatim. We're good.
All right, so I think there's a fair amount of shit to go over
I would
this
agree.
past week and a day or two.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we'll start off as every week, just talking about what we have been playing.
Mm-hmm.
And my list is pretty short, but it did kind of change today. Uh, so I'll go first. 'Cause I know you usually like have a couple fighters and some other things that you work on.
Of course.
Um, I have gotten dragged like heels first into Black Ops 6. Thank God it's on Game Pass and I don't have to pay for it. But it's I think it's a really good return to form for COD. And I've been a COD fanboy for a while. I mean, there've been a couple that I wasn't like too big of a fan of, but uh on the whole, like on a macro level, I generally enjoy COD. I mean, I have my gripes with it, as do you, and we can go over that once we inevitably start talking about it, like in earnest. But I've been playing a lot of Black Ops 6. The multiplayer is a lot of fun. I'm almost done with the campaign. I'm pretty sure I'm like on the last mission, and
Okay.
I am totally hooked on zombies this year. I think it's so much fun. I might try to go for the mastery camo grind, but we'll see how that goes in like
Yeah,
six
you
months.
mentioned.
So Black Ops 6 was a big one for me, and I told you about this earlier today, but I got into the closed alpha for Destiny Rising, the mobile,
Yes.
yeah, the mobile offering of Destiny, and I'll go into that after you talk about what you've been playing. But I put in, I mean, I didn't really like do that much because I just got into it today because it's the first. Today was the first day that it really launched. Right, that launch is the wrong word. I guess it's the first day of the tech
Opened.
test. Yeah. Um, but I have some thoughts. I gotta play it a little bit more to like really get a better understanding of how it works because it's supposed to be free to play once it actually launches. And I mean, it's a mobile game. It's going to be free to play. They're going to monetize this shit out the ass, and it's NetEase. So that comes with another
Yeah.
host of issues.
Yeah. How much time did you put into it?
I would probably say like a grand total of an hour and a half. Maybe a little bit less because it I got an email at some point today saying, "Oh, like we've the closed alpha test launched, and like here's your code." So, uh, that was, I mean, that was in between like doing family stuff. So like I really couldn't sink that much time into it. I'll probably play it more tomorrow just to see how it really handles everything that I think a Destiny game is as like a pretty hardcore Destiny fan. But I didn't put that much time into it, and I'll talk about it a little bit more once we get into like after the what we've been playing part of this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Black Ops 6 and Destiny Rising. That is what I've been playing.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, not a long list, like I said. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine.
what about you?
I've been playing pretty much the same as I mentioned last week. I still have the three fighters I always go back to. I got the Street Fighter, I got Guilty Gear, I got Tatsunoko versus Capcom. I am still playing Silent Hill 2 Remake with Luke and Harrison. We are just about done. We were playing it right before we started this, and we're pretty much on the home stretch, like the last
Mhm.
segment. I think it's really just a matter of, looking at a few pretty things and then doing the final boss, and then that's the end of it, unless
Okay.
the remake is hiding some stuff. I mentioned at a certain point either last week or 2 weeks ago or however many episodes ago that I had picked up Resident Evil 4 Remake for dirt cheap of
Mhm.
not my own money, and I have since then put two playthroughs into it.
You put in
Um,
two playthroughs? Jesus.
yeah, because I always say this about survival horror. I will always mention it from now till the day I die. Almost every good survival horror game, when you play through it once, and if you're big into those games, be it the more action-oriented ones or the traditional tank control ones or anywhere in between, they can be played very, very quickly. So
Hmm.
once I got my footing on it, because like I said, the first time I played it was through certain means on the computer, and it was kind of suboptimal. Once I got my footing in that, it was very quick to get through that first playthrough, and then you step up with the difficulty. I'm still not sure if I'm going to do a professional run, just because I'm not as hooked into it as I was the original Resident Evil 4. And my thoughts are pretty much the same now that I've played through it a few times. Is it's got a lot of good qualities for it. It just didn't need to be made. Like I hate being that guy because it's a very, very unpopular position, and it's one that's hard to argue. It's like it's to me it will always be like, hey, it's a fine game, but it really doesn't serve a purpose because it's not like the original Resident Evil remake, which added a lot of things that were cut from the cutting room floor and gave it a fresh coat of paint that was also unique in itself. And it's not like the Resident Evil 2 remake, which compared to its original, there's a very, very big difference between how the two play and the art styles of the two. Resident Evil 4 just kind of feels like unnecessary retreading, but also a few expansions which would have served a better game. And like I said last time we talked about it, I'm not really like, in order to talk about Resident Evil 4 and why I feel that way, I would need to sit down and kind of like do its own thing where I'd need to sit and go piece by piece and like kind of give it credit where I think it deserves credit, while also talking about like, hey, when you're at a point where like both games are doing the same thing and the remake isn't doing anything special, or it's just like a watered down version of the original, it's like that's when you start to lose me with remake. So even though like there are parts in Resident Evil 4 the remake which are serviceable, which is not where a remake should either thrive to do its own thing with certain sections or should be definitively better, and the remake of 4 just wasn't enough of that in enough places. I know it's a fine game, a game in a vacuum. If I had never played the original or the original didn't exist, I would say that this is still a very good game, even if it's kind of forgettable to me in some ways, but that's a whole other conversation.
As far as like remakes go, a lot of what you say about Resident Evil 4 just specifically is it's well founded enough. I also think that like if the remake never came out, then there would have been an entire generation of people who never experienced Resident Evil 4. And that's a positive, I would say.
Here's the thing I will always say about that. It's like I know games are a little different in this regard when it comes to, remakes. It's like when it comes to film, everybody's always very critical of remakes. When it comes to books, the thought of rewriting somebody else's material is kind of sacrilege. You don't really see remakes in art as far as like painting. You sometimes see different interpretations. But with games, I always feel like that excuse, and I'm not saying like, oh, you're making an excuse for it. I'm just saying that excuse in general, because you're not the only one that makes it, where a new generation gets to experiences it. I don't necessarily see that as a positive for a few reasons. One, the original is readily available on every console, and two is if those kinds of people were not kind of not the sort to get into enjoying something like a Resident Evil, oh, it's too old, it's too outdated. It's like, why do we need to remake a game for the people that just can't handle that? That doesn't make sense to me. Because that's the thing. It's like, okay, so now you have people that'll live and die by the original, and you have people that'll live and die by the remake. I don't get into too much warring, especially with stuff like this, where it's just like I have two fine games. I just think one is unnecessary, but that just serves to sow division down the line. It's kind of the same stuff where like where you target a new audience, and it doesn't necessarily. It's like, what are you doing at a certain point? I don't know. It's complicated to get to, and I get like you're not the first person. It is a little messy, like because on paper, when you say to me, it's just like, oh, a new generation gets to experience it. My first thought is, oh, so you're bringing the original version to newer platforms and people can buy it for cheap. Because then you get into the whole territory of like games preservation as a whole, and there's a whole conversation and a whole thing about that in the background. But Capcom is one of those companies that loves to remake and re-release things. Resident Evil 4, the original, is available on at least 10 different platforms that I can think off the top of my head. Like PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox One, all the way through to the series. It's on PlayStation 4. I think it was on PlayStation 3. There are 2 different releases on the PC. It's the whole like a modern audience thing or a new generation thing. It doesn't fly with me because the original exists. And if the response to that is, well, they aren't necessarily interested in it, then it's just like they don't need it, But that's a whole other conversation. I've gone too long on that enough. But basically, those are the games that I've played. I might do a professional run of 4 because I did the regular, the hardcore. The mercenaries mode is very easy. I'm not going to go too far into that, but I've S plus ranked or SS or S plus plus ranked most of the stages.
I enjoyed the mercenaries mode. It was a lot of fun.
Mercenaries is always a good time. You really can't go wrong with it.
Still like it baffles me that even in the newer Resident Evils, like there's no co-op mercenaries because that was so much fun in Resident Evil 5.
I appreciate the restraint in not adding it to the remake of 4. I think that at a certain there's a bunch of no-brainer things that Capcom could make. I don't know if you ever owned it, but on the 3DS there was the Mercenaries 3D, which was an asset flip of some Resident Evil 5
I did
stuff.
own it at one point. I was never like a huge handheld gamer. I played like a decent amount of stuff on like the Vita because I think the Vita was very underappreciated. In my opinion.
I agree.
But I never played the Mercenaries mode on 3DS.
But basically what I was saying is like they should just make a sequel to that. Like considering most of the RE Engine Resident Evils since 2 have been like sharing a lot of assets, they may as well do a Mercenaries sequel. You know, the same way I say like, oh, with the Resident Evil 2 and 3 out assets, go make another Resident Evil Outbreak. I will say the same. It's just make a sequel to the Mercenaries. You know, you had the Mercenaries 3D. Just make a Resident Evil the Mercenaries game. But I don't think they want to do that because Mercenaries is their ace in the hole for like side content in Resident Evil.
Right. They made what are they fucking Resident Evil Reverse, like just like a strictly like PvP game or something.
Yeah.
That it's like just straight ass. Like no one fucking likes that.
They did so many experiments during this RE Engine period. Like they also did Resistance or Resistance, which was like an asymmetrical horror game.
Resident Evil Resistance. Yeah. I bought like the Resident Evil pack when it's on some sale like a couple of years ago, and it's all in here. I've never touched it, but
yeah, it's from my understanding, it's an okay experiment, but it's like Capcom plays it super safe when it comes to revisiting the Mercenaries. Like 7 didn't have it, 8 didn't have it until post-launch, I think. Or no, there were 2 different versions. One was like the regular, and then they did a post-launch version 8. But anyway, that's what I've been playing. The only other thing I tried, and this might come up later, is I used this opportunity, this news cycle, to finally get into Dragon Age. So I started Dragon Age Origins.
Really?
I put some hours into it. It's the first time I've really, I want to say gave it an honest shot because I played it when it was new, and I gave it another shot when 2 came out. And the only thing I have to say so far is I can understand why I can already tell why there's been so much arguing, like into 2 and into Inquisition and again into Veilgaurd about like the series identity and how it's kind of been handled. Because I'm playing it.
I was never a Dragon Age fan, so like
I wasn't either. It never stuck with me. I'm enjoying it much more now than I did before, and the weird thing is, I felt it then, and I still feel it now. Not just because it's old. This is how I felt when I first played it. I'm pretty sure it came out in between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. It feels so much lower budget than both of those games, and I have no idea why. I think it might be an art style issue because Mass Effect 1 had this kind of dreamy kind of like the backgrounds looked like album covers and paintings, and it was a very sci-fi heavy thing, and then 2 and 3 were just high budget sci-fi. Like some of the locations in 2 and 3 are amazing to look at. Like the first time you go into Omega, that's the orange shoes and like
first
the
thing
steam.
that comes to mind.
It's so nice. And I just feel like Dragon Age, because I remember when I played 2, because 2 had a really one of those demos that you just replayed a lot, and I'm just like, all of the Dragon Age games feel like surprisingly under budget compared to Mass Effect, and that's the only thing that really sticks out to me so far. But I am sticking with it more than when I first tried it, and we're gonna see if I really like Dragon Age Origins, by the time I'm done with it, I'll probably do a full series playthrough. I will not be paying a fucking cent for Veilgaurd, but the rest of the games are in Game Pass, so it's like why not?
Yeah.
You know.
I always thought it was a Greek travesty that they never brought back the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer mode. That was so much fun. That's just they were only, in a way, that's kind of restrained for EA, because that would have been like when the Legendary Edition came out. Been cash cow.
Exactly. So I mean, at least once again, there's a lot to say even about Legendary when it comes to remastering, because I have a few nitpicks with Legendary Edition, but that's that's a conversation for another time. But that's what I've been playing, the long and short of it. I feel like I played something else too, but nothing's coming to mind. So that's what I play. That's what I've been playing recently.
Alrighty then. Well, I mean, since we just talked about Dragon Age. I mean, Veilgaurd, what a fucking disaster.
Yeah, so that is one of the things I wanted to talk about. Dragon Age Veilgaurd. So, we've talked about it before, where it was never a thing for you and it never hooked me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like a tale that's kind of new to both of us. But even like the pre-release stuff with Veilgaurd that we've seen, and all the like cutscenes that people like to harp on, and all like the cringe writing stuff and all that, like even not knowing the Dragon Age IP all that well, for either of us, that's still like that's not a good look. No. And I can only imagine what it would be like, if a Mass Effect game were to come out and like look like some of the things we've seen so far, which is likely what's going to happen if if and when.
Well, some of those screenshots
out.
that you sent me of like, them obsessing over the fucking gender. Like,
yeah.
who gives a shit?
It's somebody described it in this way to me. It's like we've moved past the point where these people that have nothing to do with making the games great, or people that didn't help make the games and stuck around with the company but were at one point culturally or politically activated, and now they're like very spiteful creatures. We've moved past the point where they're making games to spite people like you and me and old fans of the series, right? They are just at the point where they're like writing stuff and kind of huffing their own farts with it, where they're like they're no longer writing things to spite the norm. They're writing things that they just like because they feel like they've won. And from what I can tell, it does feel like they've won with Dragon Age. I mean, they're riding that all the way to the ground. Bit. And the funny thing is, like, you have more activist inclined journalists basically saying, even if this is the last Dragon Age, it's going out with a bang. I'm just like, so you're admitting this won't resonate with a lot of people, even fans of the series, but it's just the best thing ever anyway? Like, kind of contradictory, don't you think? But
some of the review scores that it's been getting, it just boggles my fucking mind.
Well, yeah, because you mentioned this with Call of Duty before. You said return to form. Something I've seen with Veilgaurd, like all of the positive reviews, all the early reviews, because now we're getting user reviews in and lower outlets that didn't get a code for free are coming in and they're not using it, but like all those early reviews were saying a return to form. It sounds like it's like on a script somewhere, which isn't unheard of with a lot of these journalist outlets. But overall with Veilgaurd, right? It doesn't seem to have.
And apparently, like a really big concern with a lot of the moment to moment gameplay or I guess storytelling. Is like the main protagonist like talks to everybody as if they're a fucking toddler, and it's like what is going on?
People have compared it to like if HR wrote the script, or if somebody in HR was in the writing room when they were writing the script. But it's like the spread of dialogue choices has been condensed. You know how it is, like this is something that's the shared DNA between Mass Effect and Dragon Age was the plethora of dialogue choices you have and like the actions you can take and how you can interact with people. And it's like where previously you could be a dickhead or a saint, or you could take some like actions that would insult people until they leave you, or you get people killed. Everything is just like, I remember because you brought up like the whole thing where they're focusing heavily on gender or whatever. Like there was one scene where it's just like all 5 of the options were some flavor of like I'm here for you, where it's just like it was like the most evil thing you could say is you've got this, you need to do this for you, and like everything in between was just like affirming them as characters. And I'm just like, listen, I understand, like Mass Effect kind of got there with Liara. Like, you can't really be a dickhead to Liara because that's like the writer's pet. And it was very apparent in later portions of 2's DLC and in 3. But it's like they treat all the characters like that now, where it's just like you're not really supposed to be a dickhead. And I know,
everything
like, listen,
has rounded corners.
Exactly. That's the best way I can put it. And I know some, like, if somebody wanted to critique, they would be like, well, there's actually some dialogue where you can be really mean to, some of the guys. It's like, it's 100 hours RPG, no matter how you slice it. Like, I'm not going to be able to give my full, but it's just like every scene I've seen, and it's not just the cringe ones that reflect, modern day shit in there, but I've seen my fair share. I know you've seen more gameplay and I've seen more story. We've probably dabbled in both a little bit. And I think it's going to be a long fucking time before either of us play the game, but it does not look like a good game. It doesn't. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't seen a single thing about it.
No, it looks like they picked the safest way to do everything in game design and stuffed it all into one package, and it
Yeah.
just doesn't look appealing in any sense of the word.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. One of the things I said to myself is I'm kind of getting Starfield vibes in how people are reacting to it. But where Starfield is like the Bethesda space game that would appeal to Bethesda diehards, I just don't see anything meaningful for the crowd that would lurk around BioWare waiting for a Dragon Age game. I don't see anything in there that, like, oh, maybe you and me don't get it, but somebody does. Like, somebody who, like, just absolutely fucking loved Inquisition and 2 in the first game, they'll love Veilgaurd. I think it's really just for people who are okay with shallow action RPG experiences and people who have a particular cause to champion. It doesn't strike me as, like, it's not even like a mass appeal game. Like, everybody, how games get, rounded. You said rounded edges. That's a good way to put it. Like, rounded edges for a game for the modern audience, or like, oh, the mass appeal, or we got to sell this to as many people as possible. This is really just like a game for a very particular group of people that it's wearing the skin of a popular existing IP. And I think a lot of people bought into it are going to be bamboozled, because I'm already seeing user reviews roll in and I've seen some comments, and I don't want to be that guy and just say, well, I saw a few people parrot my views on this game, therefore I'm correct. But it's how you get like a gut feeling about a game. Yeah. You're just like, oh, this is probably how that's how I feel Veilgaurd's going to pan out. And as far as the reception so far game wise, I think it hit on Steam 70,000 players on the first day.
That's not terrible.
It's not terrible at all. I will tell you right now, EA has killed entire franchises for much less. So, it's kind of goes. It's so weird when something like this happens, because we talk about all these different things in the industry, right? And you and me will say, like, unrealistic goals are bad, bloated marketing budgets are bad, but like the second this thing flips, all of a sudden all the people that would stand next to us and agree that all this shit is bad are saying, well, 70,000 copies isn't that bad, and it's probably closer across all consoles. It's probably maybe around 200,000 would be my guess, maybe 250,000, which is, once again, respectable. But like, we're dealing with a AAA game where EA is lurking, so it's like,
as far as Steam goes, it's sitting at a mostly positive on Steam, which I'm kind of surprised at.
Well, there's two things.
I was expecting like a mixed.
There's two things you need to factor in, because I saw it at mixed earlier. Is when we're still in the, like, we've talked about review bombing before, right? "Quote unquote" review bombing. Companies are quick to swoop in and kind of snuff out the flames of a lot of this stuff. So a lot of those early mixed reviews are going to be flagged as just spam or whatever. So you can't really trust them right away. A lot of different areas like game forums, Reddit pages, Steam forums, all of these places are banning dissenting opinions. So we're kind of in that early part of, like, the game is barely out. Like, it came out yesterday, I think. Like, it's just barely out.
Yep, yesterday.
So the first week, and this happens with every major release that's divisive, or every change that happens in a game that's divisive, or everything, like, all this kind of stuff, is the thumb is going to be on the scale for quite some time. This is definitely the kind of game where, like, you're going to have to wait for the dust to settle, just because all the voices that are saying, like, oh, I played the game and it's not that good, or oh, I love Dragon Age and it's not that good, they are going to get snuffed out and banned and deleted, and it's just going to be an information war around this game for a while. What I anticipate happening with Veilgaurd is, I think it's going to sell reasonably well. Everybody will say that it's sold reasonably well. The people that champion the game are going to say it's sold amazingly well. EA is not going to be happy with the final.
They're never happy.
Yeah, they're never happy in general. So reasonable sales aren't enough for them. Like, I look at the competitors in the space, like, everybody that makes an RPG is going to be stacked up against Baldur's Gate 3, even though I really think they shouldn't. It's not doing Baldur's Gate 3 numbers, so EA is not going to be happy with it. But we'll see what happens in the long run. But basically, it looks like shit. It doesn't look good. It's going to be one of those games that everybody talks about for the first couple months it's out. Like, oh, we champion thing because thing aligns with thing that we like and thing that we like to talk about. It's going to be like, oh, why isn't this a Game of the Year nomination? And then at the end, everyone's just going to... It's possible, but everyone's just going to fucking forget about it.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that you can best judge these things is because as much as people can lay on pressure, as much as people can lie about these things whenever they happen, the one thing they can't fake forever is enthusiasm. They just can't. It's not. It's yeah. Even for the fakest people out there that do these terrible things, they can't fake it. So,
I'm going to go back to the point that I made earlier that I think that everything that's wrong with the industry, like overall, has been shoved into this package that is called Dragon Age. Like, it's not, if you ask like a hardcore Dragon Age fan, this is not really Dragon Age. It's just it's a corpse wearing a Dragon Age mask.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to do like a full rundown of Dragon Age eventually because I find it interesting. But
that's all you. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, no. It's all of that hinges on how I feel about Dragon Age Origins. By the time I finish it, will determine whether I do anything on it. But I look at it like this: like we have had a conversation about Mass Effect all the time, where you say like 2 is your favorite, you love 2, and I always say I like 1 and I like the RPG elements of 1. Right? And we kind of differ on those opinions. Regardless of how we differ in that, 1, 2, and 3 are all very, very good games.
Yeah.
And they do have that shared DNA like between them. Like it's familiar enough when you pick it up, right? Dragon Age doesn't really have that because you have the original, which is more of a traditional RPG kind of made into a third person, where like, Mass Effect 1, you had the skill wheel, but you're still shooting. Dragon Age is a little less active where it's almost like MMO combat to a certain degree.
Well, that's why I didn't like it when I played it.
That's fine, but what I'm getting at is immediately after that, 2 came out and they tried to inject action into it, and a lot of people say it was mediocre. And then Inquisition went a step further, and they're just like, maybe we can do the action a different way, right? And then Veilgaurd is like, I can't even tell what the fuck Veilgaurd looks like. When I look at it, I'm just like, this doesn't look fun or interesting to me. That's all. Yeah. But what I'm getting at with all that is like, Dragon Age evolved out of the niche that it was in into something that wasn't appealing and didn't really have its own identity, and it didn't stick with it over the course of 3 games. So it's just like, that is like, that's why it comes down to like, who is this game for? Aside from the writing, just like how the game handles and how there's less carryover with the characters and how your character, to my understanding, is there's 3 different main characters across 4 games. So it's like,
I have no idea.
You're always changing. I don't want to go too deep into it because we haven't played all of it, but the bottom line is Veilgaurd does look appealing, and there's multiple reasons behind that, and it'll sell enough to keep the arguments going where people who champion the game say like, hey, it's sold really well, what are you talking about? All you guys, you suck. You guys saying that the game suck, you're wrong, But then like everybody just kind of forgets about the game. So that's probably what's going to happen with it, if I had to guess.
Actually, one of the tags on Steam for this is LGBTQ+.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like the first tag.
The funny thing about that is for a long time, like the kind of online types that love to just like, not even that they identify with those tags, but like they just hate people like you and me would use that tag to rub it in your face, right? But lately, like companies are like wary about when people add those user tags on there because of how those lists are getting bigger and bigger now, where people are they spend their money elsewhere, where you kind of need like an existing IP like a Dragon Age to get past that. So that's an interesting thing to note.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know, man. It's just it's not going to stop until the bubble bursts.
It'll stop eventually. I think we're getting closer and closer to it stopping. But the problem is, like I said, a lot of these people that are in our age range and a little younger and a little older that like had this societal chip on their shoulder and a cause to champion are now like, they're firmly wedged in a lot of these existing companies because of the hiring practices, and we're going to have to deal with the fallout of them just screwing over everything for a while. Luckily, we dodged a bullet for now because we're not very big into Dragon Age. We'll have a struggle session when Mass Effect 5 comes out. That's when we're going to have to, it's not going to, but I sincerely hope BioWare like something shakes BioWare or just kills it beforehand. Like, I'm not saying this like, oh, Dragon Age sold poorly, so it's gonna. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like I don't know if I want Mass Effect 5 with current BioWare, you know?
Oh, well, I
But,
mean, it's not the BioWare that made the original trilogy by any stretch of the imagination.
and I'm
So
sure
it's going to be a different thing.
yeah, I'm sure as we get closer they'll trot out names that we know and expect us to clap or whatever, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from that,
Yeah.
so we talk about Black Ops a little bit because we have both played
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, what have you played of it? 'Cause I know you played like a very little bit amount of multiplayer, right?
I've played a little bit of multiplayer. I've played a few zombie rounds, mainly with you. That
Yeah.
one I played with you, and then like two others. And I played through the entirety of campaign with Luke, and I'm
Okay.
now doing my own solo playthrough.
What did you think of the campaign? I'm pretty sure I'm on the last mission.
So my whole deal with campaign is I immediately think about Cold War. Because
Okay.
I enjoyed the Cold War campaign for what it was, and my complaint with the Cold War campaign was, right as it got started, it basically rushed to an ending, and I attributed that to the game being rushed, essentially, right?
Hmm.
And the interesting thing is, when it came time to play Black Ops 6, I got like the same vibes from it despite it having more development time, honestly. Like, I feel like there are some really cool missions in there, but it's like right as like you're getting into the swing of things, it kind of just once again just rushes to the end. Like you hit a point of no return and you just it rushes you out the door. Now that being said, a lot of the missions are really cool, which is nice, but it's not like I hold a lot of these Call of Duties to the standard set by Modern Warfare 2019. Not because I think it's the best campaign in the series, but because I think it's the like most perfectly paced Call of Duty campaign, where it's just like things happen, but there's no filler. But it fits the story the way that it needs to, right? So when I look at the campaign for Black Ops 6, basically what I think is like I think that it's just not paced properly. I feel like you could squeeze like two more missions in there, maybe do more with the hub world, and I'd be happier with it. But basically, I was excited for Black Ops 6 because I'm just like, okay, Cold War was good, but it was rushed, and then Black Ops 6 came out and it just feels the same way. So I'm just like, maybe they just can't make it the way I want to, or maybe I don't like the new setup, or I don't know. So basically, like where you are having a shit ton of fun, I'm just having fun the usual Call of Duty way, where it's just like, oh, we got the guys together, we can play a little bit of Call of Duty. You know, I'm not as wowed by it, I guess I could say.
I don't know if I would use the term wowed. I'm just having a lot more fun than I usually would with like something like zombies or even multiplayer. It just feels like the older Black Ops games, which were
Yeah,
definitely they were the better entries in the IP, like way back when.
yeah,
And something that I actually really appreciate is that there is so few emblems and calling cards. At least right now, it'll probably change once like season one starts.
probably.
Um, but it's like when you actually earn something, it feels well earned. It doesn't feel like, oh, it's just like one thing in a sea of meaningless items that you can unlock. Um, so it's just it's just a good fun. Like, I mean, I know there'll be another one next year, and that's why I kind of stopped going for the camo grinds because it's just meaningless after the 12 month calendar year is up with COD. So it's just, but I'm just having so much fun with it. I'm like, man, fuck it.
No, it's
Maybe I'll
good.
just try to do it this year.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Um, and campaign is my favorite Michael Bay simulator. You know, it's uh, explosions everywhere and gunfights, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, the story is like okay. The best part about it is the characters. I think like Adler and Woods are always good to watch on screen.
Yeah.
Um, and I like what they're doing with the player controlled character.
Yeah, there's actually I'm not gonna spoil anything. There's more to say about it when you actually beat the campaign, but
Okay.
you actually mention it where you're just like Woods and Adler. I think Adler was a cool addition in Cold War, and I think he fits the Black Ops sub series very well.
Yeah.
I think he serves a lot of purpose. I do not like the story implications of Black Ops 6.
Okay.
I don't know how much you've read into it, and you're past the point where they don't really spell it out for you, but you're kind of past the point where like they alluded to it. So if you didn't catch it now, you're not going to catch it. But I don't know if you heard
Uh,
this with basically when they made Black Ops 6, they canonized a few things from Black Ops 2.
I
Um,
honestly have like a kind of a little bit of trouble following the Black Ops story just because it's so
okay,
spread out over so many years,
so
and like my
I'll
own life gets in the way. It's like the
that's perfectly
continuity is
fine.
tough to follow.
But here's the thing. I mean, you have all the pieces that you need basically because
Mm.
you played World at War when it was new. You played Black Ops 1 when it was new. You played Black Ops 2 when it was new, right?
Yeah.
3 and 4 really don't matter in the grand scheme of things, and you played Cold War, which took place in between Black Ops 1 and 2.
Okay.
But anyway, what I was gonna say is like I don't like they basically went back and they said like Black Ops 2, there's like 6 different endings, right?
Um. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a ton of endings in 2 based on multiple different choices. That was like the gimmick of 2 stories. Like there's different choices and it changes the ending based on whether this technician survives, Menendez
Well,
survives,
obviously, they
and
canonized something.
yes, they did. They canonized one of the worst endings. Like,
Of
and I
course,
don't
they
mean
did.
worse as in like, oh, it's like just a shitty story, which some people would argue, but like the worst performing ending. So basically, what they did is they canonized that Menendez is dead, but they already did that in Black Ops 3, but it was like they touched on it. So Menendez is dead, which is part of one of the worst story beats of 2, and they canonized that Mason is also dead. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like I'm always
That's
kind
right.
of rubbed.
They said that Mason was, I guess, spoilers, obviously, I guess anyone who actually cares.
Yeah, who
But
hasn't played all the
you know,
games at this point?
yeah, they said that Alex Mason was dead. I was just like, I don't remember that happening.
So basically, because everybody with a brain, when they got to that mission, they're just like, okay, there's something off about the guy they want me to shoot. I'm going to aim for the leg instead of the head, right? So it's like you have the option of doing a non-lethal shot, but it looks like he's dead anyway. Like he gets tricked into it. They also seemingly retconned that Hudson was being manipulated by Menendez, and they made it so that Adler was behind it all for whatever reason. That could also just be something they haven't teased. But basically, I know it's silly to me, but like when I play a game, regardless of whether it's something like, a Call of Duty sub-series or a lengthy RPG like Mass Effect or even a fighting game story. Like, I get a lot of shit for arguing about stuff that happened in Guilty Gear. Like, I always bring that up. I'm just like, there's a lot of inconsistencies here. It always bugs me when there's inconsistencies in a story, regardless of whether it's something I'm supposed to treat like schlock or something that, like, is meant to be enjoyed over hundreds and hundreds of hours. So that kind of that irks me. There's like something activated in the back of my mind where I'm just like, ugh, this feels wrong, So that was just like a small thing that kind of irked me, where it's just like, oh, okay, we had these 6 endings and kind of everybody has their opinions on them, but most people don't like these endings, and they took one of those endings and they put it in there. It's like back in the day when you played the game, you had the 6 endings, and each of them, like, some of them had really dire consequences, and I'm just like, I don't know how you canonize that and then just write off all the things that happened in it, but whatever. I guess we'll.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of take each COD as its own. Obviously there are some that will tie directly into
See,
others, but
I don't
probably what
know.
they're banking on.
But that's so stupid. If that's the case, then don't even bother making like. So it's like,
No, I don't disagree.
It would be like if Modern Warfare 2 came out and Price died at the end of Call of Duty 4, which I championed. I'm just like, no, he's alive, he's alive, and everybody's just like, no, he's dead, you fucking idiot. And then he showed up in Modern Warfare
Well,
2.
didn't they kill off every Price like in every COD game, like leading up to that?
Oh, no. So in Call of Duty 2, the Captain Price of that game it's like there's like a standoff where it's like you and Price on a submarine, I think.
Okay.
And like,
Yeah, your memory is way better than mine.
I could be mixing something because it's been a while since I played Call of Duty 2, but I remember it's basically like, it's not even a dramatic thing. It's just like, how all like the random, fodder like soldiers will be with you, and like just over time they'll just die over time. Like that's how he dies in like Call of Duty 2. And I think it's yeah, and it's just like it's whatever. Like I like the old Price too. I think he's a cool character. He's like the strongman archetype, and he's like the jolly good, kind of like good old British soldier kind of. He's a lot of fun. I think they did him dirty, but it's just like, but there was no like set in stone like, oh, Price has to die in Call of Duty 4, right? So,
right.
But that's what I was getting.
Okay.
So that's my take on Black Ops 6 is what I'm getting at. I guess.
Still tilted that they killed Gaz, and then they they killed Gaz and then they made Ghost in Modern Warfare 2, and it was just the same voice actor. It's just like we're just gonna bring this guy back as a different
and then they
character
killed
with the
Ghost,
same
and then
voice.
they gave the guy from Call of Duty 4, when they brought him back and gave him a voice, they gave him the voice again. So he was a different character in all three of those games. And if
That's just
yeah
hilarious.
yeah
That's just funny.
yeah,
Uh, all right, so I guess it was as good a time as any to talk about Destiny Rising because
hey, go for it.
it's pretty much like the only other thing that I really have to touch on. All right, so this is a free-to-play, uh, Destiny offering on mobile, and it's very it just has the free-to-play feel, you know. One, I fucking hate touch controls. I actually tried to link my Xbox controller to my phone and then play it that way, and it was a little bit better. But the major takeaway that I have right now is like the game needs a lot of technical work. There's a lot of pop in. Things are very sluggish. The controls feel funky even on controller. Um, and it's just like Destiny as a franchise has always rode on its laurels of it just feels good to play. It's the people who like to play it. I know you don't agree with that, but that's a conversation for
So yeah, well,
probably
I mean
never when it comes
that's
to us.
yeah yeah that's my listen. That's my preference. I get it, but I understand what you mean. Where it's just like if you like the Destiny style, it feels good to play. Like they
Yeah,
cater to you and it works. I get it.
yeah. So it doesn't like as far as a mobile shooter goes. I mean, I guess it's fine. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with mobile games. I don't. That's not my cup of tea. But I'm going to at least give this game a try because I'm such a big Destiny fan. Uh, and it, oh man, there's like so the touch controls are one thing. The game basically auto aims for you, which I guess they kind of have to do that because
Yeah.
it's a mobile shooter, and you have the option of swapping back and forth between third person and first person as for aiming purposes. Um, I can't stand that on any game that I play. Like I feel like if you're gonna have the option, pick a perspective and stick with it.
Yeah.
It just makes the game better overall. I just don't like all the Ghost Recons. A major reason why I have a big dislike for Ghost Recon is because the whole thing is in third person, but like when you go to engage a target, it's like it fucking zips you right to first person ADS, and I just oh, unless it's a sniper rifle, it fucking irks me to no end. It's like a weird gaming pet peeve of mine, and it just turns me off to the game. But
Yeah.
you don't really ever have to use it because the camera will zoom in over the shoulder and you'll just shoot in the auto aim, the aggressive auto aim, I might add, will just take over. Um, but it's pretty clear that there is different abilities from the core Destiny experience. I've already noticed like the sword that they give you starting is a combination of like one of the supers in Destiny 2 and then one of the exotic swords in Destiny 2, like just kind of combined into one. And it, my opinion isn't completely formed yet because I still have to play more of the game to like really get a feeling for how it's gonna be in the long term. But I will say they are leveraging the Triumph system to play into the monetization structure, and I feel like that's fucking dirty. I don't like it. I think it's just a shitty way to get you to play the game. And because like every time you unlock a triumph in Destiny, like your legend score will go up. It's just like, oh, this person has played this much of the game. This is the score that you have on your account. In Destiny Rising, like you complete a triumph, oh, claim this premium currency that I don't even know if it's enough to buy anything yet because I haven't gotten that far into it, but
Oh.
it's like 50, silver, I guess I'll call it. That's the premium currency
Okay.
in Destiny 2, but it has a different name in Destiny Rising. Uh, so that's one thing. Oh, and the character creation options are very uh, uh, I mean, there's really no other way of putting it. They're very LGBTQ friendly. It's like, yeah, between the three voices you can choose, one of them just sounds straight up androgynous. You just can't fucking tell what gender the voice is. Um,
Yeah, I always my whole thing with like that kind of stuff, because I've gotten into arguments and conversations with people, because I do think that more customization is better customization, but it honestly seems that these companies, what they do, instead of just adding that customization for people, they look at the particular groups they want to cater to, they focus on that, put out a bunch of options that fit for that and would technically fit for a regular guy or a regular girl, and then it's just a new pool of restricted options. But what I would say is that my memory of the original Destiny and Destiny 2 character creator is very lacking, for lack of a better. I
yeah,
don't
this is
remember it
worse
being that. How is that possible?
because I mean, again, this is just the alpha. I don't know if they're
Okay.
gonna give you the option to choose your race in the final version, but
Mm-hmm.
from what I've played so far, it's okay. Here are three different voice options you can choose from. One is male, one is female, one you can't tell. Here are the three pronouns you can choose from. Yes, there's a pronoun option. And I'm like, it does like what the it doesn't I don't care. Like
Well, you gotta be careful
he,
with that,
she,
Dan,
or they.
because
And
because people say that if you care about that, you're just bitching about nothing.
I mean, I guess, but how far are you gonna take it?
No, don't actually. I'm propping up the argument. You're not supposed to say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." No, it doesn't. I get why that's it's a nuisance. It's all
Yeah,
pandering nonsense.
it's just stupid. Um, and I mean, look, it is what it is. I have to see how the game plays out over the course of an extended period of time. I feel like as a mobile game, it'll be fine. Um, it'll have its dailies and its weeklies and all that shit.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, as like a hardcore Destiny player, I want to know what the end game is like, and I didn't have the time today to really put
Yeah,
in
that's
to
fair.
see what is going on there, because like I want to raid and I want to go into dungeons, and
Hmm.
the experience for that is like, okay, there's pretty complex puzzle mechanics that you need to coordinate with your teammates, otherwise you're just gonna wipe.
Yeah,
And I don't see how you're gonna effectively implement something like that into a mobile game. I mean, maybe they
yeah,
will, but it's like I, a lot of unknowns right now. I guess this alpha is might just be like a technical test to see how the game is gonna hold up under load, but
hmm,
it I just have to have more exposure to it, I think. And the gear system is a little funky. There are new perks in this, which uh, I think a lot of core Destiny players are going to be like, "What the fuck? Like, where's my new shit?" You know? So, yeah, I mean, I'll get back to you next week after when
yeah.
I play more of it, but so far it's like a weird, I don't know if I like this yet or not. I mean, the touch controls don't help anything, and if I do ever invest in like one of those clip-on controllers, the controls need to be way more snappy. They are not good enough for even an Xbox controller right now. They feel very sluggish. It feels like you ever
Yeah.
play like a cloud game?
Oh yeah.
It's kind of
I
like that.
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't give them all my fair shot, but I've tried enough to kind of be like, "Ugh, this don't work,"
Yeah,
you know.
especially on a first-person shooter, the one that like emphasizes or encourages precision-based
And
aiming, like
I don't
headshots
see that
and
going
crit
well.
spots and whatnot.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. The whole Destiny formula doesn't really it doesn't really feel to me like it works in a mobile setting without being insanely pared down to something that basically wouldn't appeal to people who are playing Destiny anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I mean, listen, you're gonna try it some more and you're gonna play it some more. You're gonna get back to me and see how it feels. I'm not hopeful for your experience, and it's not just because of my biases. I just don't.
Well,
I don't
apparently,
think it's
like
gonna work.
as far as the lore perspective goes, like it takes place in an alternate version of reality, which I think
Yeah.
was stupid. They didn't need to do that because, quite honestly, the Destiny universe is so filled to the brim with lore that you could have just had it take place hundreds of years in the past or in the future or whatever, and still work around the existing lore of Destiny 1 and 2. But apparently, they chose to not go that route and just have an alternate universe. And the speaker sounds like a fucking child. I don't know why, but the speaker for the Traveler sounds like a little girl, and it in the games it was always like a grown adult. Like I don't care if it was male or female, but it was always a grown adult as the speaker, and I just seems out of place to me
It's
as a child.
yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. Like in being in that alternate universe, it kind of gives them that leeway. I'm kind of with you where it's just like I don't know why they felt the need to do that, given that they're they just wrapped up the massive story that's been going on since the release, and given how they have stressed to players, as far as I can tell, that it's an expansive universe that has room for growth, right? Like, why introduce alternate realities? I know they're not necessarily going to cross over, or they might, given events.
They
Or something
might.
like that.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities purely from a monetization standpoint.
Yeah, I just feel like they risk alienating people even more than they already have with this new era of story. It just feels like an unnecessary step. But I guess you'll tell me what happens.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm gonna get in the alpha because
Yeah.
I don't know when it's supposed to launch. I'm gonna look that up actually, but
Hmm.
I think it's sometime early next year, so maybe like February or something. But this is just the alpha. Like I know when I loaded in, everybody was T-posing, and then I had to walk into like an empty space to get to the objective, and then once I
Hmm.
got there, all the environment popped in. It was like, whoa, like what the fuck? So the game definitely needs work as far as like technically speaking. So,
Okay.
but that's easily patched later on. Like I'm not really gonna judge the game on that. The controls, on the other hand, like that is what I think needs work.
Okay.
But it's still touch controls for a shooter, so I don't know how that's gonna go.
Okay. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't see. I don't see all the moves they've made and all the things I've heard through you. I don't really see Destiny taking strong steps in this new era of Destiny. It doesn't. It doesn't seem like the game, the core game proper, and these new attempts at other smaller games are really going to do much outside of maybe get a few whales, so to speak, on the mobile game
They probably
to
will.
like just get enough funding. Because it's kind of like a side note, recently World of Warcraft put out like a $90 cosmetic
Jeez.
mount that just sold a ridiculous amount to the point where it actually screwed up the in-game economy for like a week.
Christ.
Yeah, so it's just like, if I think a lot of these developers that flirt with MMO games or MMO type games, because we've had the semantic argument before about Destiny, whether it's an MMO or if it just has elements of an MMO, it attracts that same kind of group.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these developers are realizing, hey, if we can just net a few loyal people, or a few people that are just bought in, and like kind of like, there's loyal people, there's people who have sunk cost, and then there's people who like the weird online types that make individual IPs their entire identity and just live and breathe by that series. Like, if you can hook enough of those three types of people, you'll make up for, like, potentially, like, oh, this one person will make up for 100 sales that we
Yeah.
miss. So I think
I'm
there's a lot
definitely
of
more in the
incentive
sunk
there.
cost camp
Oh,
of that.
absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't
Um,
implying that like Destiny is your fucking identity.
Oh, no.
I was just saying that that's another one to factor in, like the terminally online people that like to infiltrate these different games, and they're the kinds of people you would never want to talk to, but they're just like, well, I'm here and this is mine, and I've been
Yeah.
here a long time, and look at all the stuff I bought. Like that's
I have
another
never
type
spent
of
any money
person.
on a mobile game. It would take a lot for me to drop a dime
Yeah,
on a Destiny mobile game.
yeah.
So
I haven't
I don't
spent
know.
anything on microtransactions like that
Yeah.
either. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to get back to you next week as far as what it's shaping up to be like. I don't even know how long this alpha is running to, but
Mm,
I have to put more time into it and see what it's like. And I'm just gonna have to grind through it because I cannot even stress enough how much I can't stand touch controls on a shooter mobile game on a mobile shooter game.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It
Anywho,
seems a bit rough. Yeah.
what else is there?
I mean, it's kind of like a small thing, just because it relates to something that I've spoken about quite a few times on here. Video game mods, right? I've talked about the different fighting game developers that are kind of like scrunching down on mod developers. There, Joe has kind of like put his 2 cents in, and has also mentioned how Nexon is going after people, private shit. So Namco, who I've mentioned before with Tekken, has kind of like cracked down on modifications in Tekken, right, and different exploits and stuff like that. If you're not familiar, Namco publishes a lot of shit. Like they
Yeah,
have
no, I
their
know.
hands.
What was it them
Yeah.
on like the casino games?
No, that was Konami. Konami was
Right.
big into the
Okay.
casino. I mean, I'll be honest, all of those, like Sega, Namco, Capcom, and Konami, all have like arcade and gambling interests. Konami's probably the biggest. Sega is right behind them, but they're more gambling and amusement. Anyway, Namco is probably the big of those four companies I mentioned, and out of a lot of Japanese companies, they are one of the biggest publishers. Like, they just own a shit ton of rights, and they fish out for developers and whatnot. Like, they're a big part of the reason that arena fighters are like have that stigma around them, where it's just like, oh, if there's an anime out there, it's gonna get like a shitty arena fighter or maybe an okay arena fighter, you know, because they own the rights and they go out to these developers and say, make a tie into this anime, right? Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because it's kind of like almost like an alarm sounding thing. With Tekken, which is a game they publish and develop, they had that cracking down that I mentioned. Now, recently, that Dragon Ball game came out, Sparking Zero. We talked about that briefly at a couple points. They recently put out a statement basically saying a new wave of bans is coming, and that when these bans hit, if we detect that you have game modification files in your client, we will be banning you. They basically said.
That's shitty.
Yeah, they said it very like much harsher in the Japanese announcement, because like I've kind of described to you once how the Japanese are with technology. They just don't get certain things, and they treat mods like cheats almost. And what really put this forward is there are a lot of what if scenarios in the new Dragon Ball game, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. That's like one of the big hooks, is there's what if scenarios. So, you know, like how Goku Black is a thing.
Yeah.
There's an alternate scenario where instead of Goku Black, it's Gohan Black, and he's not playable, so people were modding to play as him. And I think that like pissed off some executive at the top, and now they're ushering in these bans. And I just think, I mean, overall it's stupid. You really, as long as, and me and Joe have mentioned this before, as long as you're not like cheating, which is, you know, they treat all of these mods as cheats, you really shouldn't be banned for this. If you have your own client and you're playing offline as like this character, like who cares? They left it in the files. You're gonna play around with the files. It's yours. But this just goes into the whole digital ownership thing that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, it's not yours, and you can go fuck yourself, apparently.
But no, that was just another thing I thought I'd touch on, just because I heard it's just, and this is a big one. Like Dragon Ball is, well, it's not like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is not like a massive fighter. It is one of the biggest casual nets in that particular field, which we've talked about. I had the whole semantic argument about, you know, casual versus this and that and the other thing, but basically, I just think it's going to impact a lot of people, and I think some people are going to wake up to it, but ultimately, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think Namco is going to overshoot as much as they could, and I don't think people are going to wake up as much as they should, but it's just like, something's got to give with this, because they're going to keep pushing and squeezing, and I think it's a bad look for everybody involved, especially in a niche genre like fighting games. Like, you can't keep squeezing this, because I've talked to you a lot about the fighting game community and the fighting game genre and how it's kind of looking in the 2020s, right?
Yes.
And I've kind of talked about how the general like community is kind of shit and how that's kind of reaching a boiling point. I'm one thing I haven't really considered, it's been in the back of my mind, but I'm just like, what does that look like? If you have a situation where like the games are kind of all getting homogenized to play a certain way or have similar elements where they don't feel as unique, and you have a community filled with awful people, and you have all these pro tournaments which are incredibly sterile, and then you have all of the publishers at the top basically saying you can't do anything creative or fun on the side with your own content, what does that do to a genre, like in the long run? Like, I'm just thinking, like, what, like, it's not even like a bubble bursting, it's like squeezing a bubble until it's just gone, you know? It's just like you're flattening it and deflating it. Like, I don't know what that looks like when you squeeze all of the natural fun and side stuff that people do with video games.
It looks like Madden.
Like, I mean, it's actually funny. In the back of my head, I'm just like, sterile. You're heading towards sports games. I don't, like, that would be such a bad thing for the genre, because I've talked, I'm like, fighting games can bounce back, the community can bounce back. I don't know how, like, getting companies to move and change their policies on a lot of these things is it takes so fucking long to get them to move. Like, that could kill fighting games for like a decade or put them in like a dark age, because like unless the wild card always being like double A's stepping up and basically filling the spots of triple A, but in a niche genre like fighting games, I just don't know. I ended up rambling more than I intended because it's just really just about mod cracking down. But like,
You tend to do that.
yeah, but it's like I always fighting games. I can't stress enough how passionate I am about that genre, and I want to do so much stuff in that genre while I still can. And it's just like, to me, I just like, I lived through a golden age that was so bright that people think that it was long. Like everybody's just like, oh man, wasn't it amazing when fighting games were really good from 2009 to 2018? I'm just like, it was good from like 2009 to 2011, but that period was so bright, people think it lasted like a decade. Like that's how good fighting games were.
Everyone played fighting games back then.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, you know, I was playing Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. Everybody was playing Soul Calibur. Everybody was playing Mortal Kombat. The Dragon Ball games were still like kind of in that realm where it's just like, you know, oh, Tenkaichi wasn't like still going, but like there were arena fighters in that vein, even though they weren't as good. And you had like Burst Limit, which was doing its thing. Like people were still willing to try fighting games because they were just so goddamn fun, and people were trying with single player content. And I can't stress enough how important that is, because it's just, I always say this. Fighting games, people have this stigma around them where they're not easy to get into, and there's something just wrong with that mentality. And nowadays more than ever, because they will gut themselves and bleed themselves dry to make them easier for people, and they'll all make all these different schemes of control for you to like, just please come play our fucking game. You know, I busted Joe's chops that one time we were playing Modern Warfare, the raids, and I'm just like, the games suck now and you fuckers still aren't playing. Like, that's so true about these fighting games. But back in the day, I didn't know how to play a fighting game, but I just picked it up and played, and there was a point in time where everybody I knew was giving at least one kind of fighting game a shot. You know, people I know now that, like, I know you had Soul Calibur, I know you tried Mortal Kombat at a certain point. It's just like, and now it's like, when's the last time you tried a fighting game like Dragon Ball Fighters, and how long were you even really sticking with it?
Not that, no. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, Dragon Ball Fighters is correct, but
yeah, I don't want to, this isn't me like, you know, admonishing you. I'm just saying, like, that's like, if the games were just fun and had content, people would give them a shot and play. There are people that just buy, like, Mortal Kombat was so good at that for decades that there are people who just buy the game because it has Mortal Kombat and it sits on a shelf. Like, that's how good it was at a certain point, but it just isn't anymore. But I don't want to rant about fighting games. All I wanted to say is Namco is making more moves and mods, and that's only going to get worse until somebody tells them to stop. And that could lead to a very dark place for the genre, one I had not foreseen.
Okay, fucking Sidious.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, all right. Well, got anything else?
Last thing I kind of got, and this might be something that I don't think we'll argue about, but I don't think you'll see it quite the same way I do.
Okay.
I saw a lot of pre-release stuff because there was some event going on. It was, I don't know if it was a Comic-Con. Was it a Comic-Con? Did a Comic-Con just come and go?
Maybe.
some event. I think Comic-Con normally takes place in October, right?
Yes.
We went to a few. Okay, so I think Comic-Con just came and went, and there was obviously a bunch of showings, mainly in stuff that we don't really talk about. But I saw a panel. I didn't watch it fully, but I saw bits and pieces of it for the Devil May Cry anime.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh man, does it look like dog shit. It's being spearheaded by the same guy that helmed the Castlevania series.
I knew it.
Which also sucked. I know we have a few people like
we have our disagreement on that because I enjoyed Castlevania.
What do you remember of it?
I remember the cool action.
Oh boy, that's an answer. Do you remember anything else about it?
What do you want from me? This is like back when Livy was first born. Like,
I'm just saying it's just like, that's the kind of, like, I don't want to hang you with your words. But
I remember Trevor Belmont. I liked him as a character. I remember the sorceress's name is escaping me, but I remember her character. Didn't they end up together at the end of the show?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And then there was one other who was like the third one to round out the trio. What?
The fact that you can't remember that is pretty funny because that's a big
Okay, a
one.
lot has happened in my life since I watched that.
No, no, no. Listen, listen. I appreciate everything that you go through in your life. If you don't remember the son of Dracula in a
Oh, there you go.
Castlevania
Yeah, yeah,
series,
yeah, yeah.
like you're just cut. Listen,
Alucard.
you're
Yeah, I got
you're
it.
proving the point that I haven't even gotten to make yet, which is these animes, which aren't really animes, they're outsourced to the Korean studios, which doesn't count. And in some cases, they make their way to American studios, which once again does not count. Anime is Japanese animation made in Japan or outsourced to Japan. These things are made for people who have heard of the name at least once, maybe played a game like a decade before they heard about the anime, and they watch it and they say, boy howdy, was the action good. What a great series. When it's disrespectful to the source material, it's shitty Marvel-esque writing of the times, it's removed from a lot of the elements that made characters and set pieces.
Well, I
and
guess
music
that's the
and all these
difference
things
between
great.
like you at being somebody who's actually played all the Castlevania games and me not.
But
Um,
but like my whole thing is like, if you like, I can appreciate that you liked it for the action, right? If there was a substantive story in there, you would remember the story or you would remember the characters. Like you wouldn't struggle to remember something like an Alucard, you know?
yeah.
Like
All right,
I
that's
know
fair.
I like off the top of my head, like I could ask you like a question about like a Sons of Anarchy, and you could
Mhm.
probably give me some plot details, and it's probably, I mean, you did rewatch it somewhat recently, so this is, I guess is
That's
kind of a
true.
bad
Yeah,
example.
I was about
But
to say like I
if you
rewatched it
hadn't
like less than a year ago.
if you hadn't rewatched it, you could still probably give me like decent beats, or I could point to an episode or something happening, and like all of a sudden the gears would start turning and you would remember it. And
Mhm.
that says a lot because we both know your memory isn't all that great to begin with.
Fuck you.
So
But
I'm just
you are
saying,
correct.
listen. I only say this because like I'm trying to make a point, but then I'm just like the deck is loaded here. Like shit, his memory's not that great to begin with. So how do I make my fucking point here? The point is, Castlevania sucked. It's for people who don't like, who are just easy. It's like the fucking Resident Evil films where people watch them as like, I laughed because the action was schlocky, and that's why it's a good film series. And then they make seven
Well,
of them, and they all
I
suck.
never liked the Resident Evil
But I'm just saying,
movies.
like, but if somebody came up to you, they would say to you what you said to me about the Castlevania series, and you'd be like, "I don't get it. How could they possibly like that? Like, it's the same fucking thing. It's just everybody just has a level." I'm sure, like, I'm a bit biased because I like Castlevania as a series. I liked Resident Evil as a series. I still do, but it's just like when these things come out, like nothing is more frustrating to me than somebody getting wowed by like a handful of scenes in like a multiple season
I wouldn't
terrible.
say that it wowed me. I think that's unfair, but
When I say
I
wowed a
remember
lot,
it
but
favorably.
that's I say wowed, but that's really what I mean. It's like, oh, they remember and say like, oh yeah, it was good, you know. But it's
Yeah.
like really, but it's just like it wasn't. You know, it's like if I give you the time to go and watch Castlevania again, you wouldn't be able to get through it. You wouldn't be able to, because
Yeah,
and
all right.
the reason I say that is because the first season is 4 episodes long. All of the action is in the last episode. The second season has some action in some of the early episodes, but the rest of it, like the main characters are just like dicking around for most of the season. And then 3 and 4 are most of the same, and I can't even remember most of Nocturne. I do my due diligence. I don't just go out and say this is shit. I find a way to watch these things where they can't get my views, and then I sit there and I go, wow, you did a terrible fucking job with this from just top to bottom. They're they are more fond in your memory than they are in the actual thing proper. But that's all I wanted to say is I saw the Castlevania thing. It looks like shit. That's all.
Okay.
And I'm very excited for people to say like, oh wow, this looks this. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw the Devil May Cry thing. They all blend together because
Right.
they're all the same
Yeah.
shit by the same person. But it's like I can't wait for people to say like, oh my god, Devil May Cry is so back. It's another thing that pisses me off, and this is the last thing I swear, is people say like, oh, it's about time Devil May Cry got an anime. And I go, you motherfuckers. I have it on DVD. I have the Devil May Cry anime on DVD. And it was entertaining. It had all the right voice actors. It was a lot of fun. It has an anime already, and it's fine for what it is. This new one is going to suck. That's all.
Okay.
It was
You
funny
know, you
too,
probably know better than I'm not gonna watch it. I don't have the time for it, but
because I don't want you to
I was
watch and say
also
like,
never
oh,
into
that
Devil
was
May
good.
Cry. Like that was never my game. Um But yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's a conversation for another time. But Devil May
yeah.
Cry is it has its ups and its downs and its own identity thing it goes through. But it was pretty good.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, that's pretty much all I got.
yeah. That's all I got. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I guess it wraps up episode 28 of the Pregame Network podcast.
Yes, indeed.
If three people out there watching, I think that number goes down every week, but
No, no, it just takes a while because like let's see the most recent one. Let's see,
well,
5 in a day.
23 hours ago. Yeah,
Yeah, 5 in a
not
day is
bad.
not bad. By the time we next week
By our
it goes
standards.
up and down. Yeah, so
Um,
negative.
nah. No, you're the chief morale officer. That all the positivity falls to you.
And then let me hold on. Let me do the things are good. There you go.
Future
Be
is bright.
moraled. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll catch everybody next week, and yeah, that about does it.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.